Alright, let's do this before I try to change up anything else with my setup. After the last week, I feel like this is something I need to do. Welcome back, friends, and today I want to talk to you about something that is very personal to me, and it has been weighing on me all week and not been really sure what to say, how to say it. But after seeing a multitude of posts and cliche platitudes about the matter, I feel like adding my personal experience to the discussion may give better perspective, or may just give a new perspective or better understanding of what may be going on in some other people's lives. So if you're new here, my name is Kendall, and I'm an online content creator. This is what I do for a living, believe it or not. But before this was my primary job, my career, I've spent time doing everything from pageant hair and makeup to photography, graphic design, working for years as a branding consultant, and being a volunteer and military wife. But today, in this week's conversation around mental health, after the tragic passing of Miss USA and former Miss North Carolina, Chesley Christ, has just stung me to the core. And after 5 days of watching people mourn and pose questions, and then people from the outside of the situation looking in make assumptions and pass judgment, like I said, there's just a great misunderstanding about what it means to be struggling with mental health, with depression, and how someone so beautiful, so accomplished, so intelligent, so gifted and creative could find themselves in a position where they felt like the world was better off without them. So that's what I want for us to chat about today. I do have my iPad here with my personal notes on them just to help me stay on track. So if you see me looking down, that's what I'm looking at. And if you see me like looking over the camera, it's because, and not like eye contact with you, I have a little tiny screen on this camera that shows me what I'm doing, and I just keep looking at it because that's the natural thing to do. But I want to talk about my personal experience with having high functioning depression versus my experience with traditional depression, and why they're so different, and why we can't treat them the same. As a friend, as a loved one, they have to be navigated very differently. I gotta let my cat in. So first, I want to tell you a little bit about high functioning depression versus traditional So first, I'm going to tell you a little bit about high functioning depression versus traditional depression and what they look like. For me personally, I have a natural inclination leaning towards high functioning depression versus traditional. And traditional and high functioning manifest, they look very different from the outside looking in, but internally can feel very, very much the same. So I'm going to use this analogy that I came up with that hopefully will help you see the difference, even though they're in very similar situations. So imagine there is a person, myself, or someone else, who is going through a traumatic situation, and they have a tendency for depression, or they may be triggered to a depression. And when that happens, they are go from being inside a boat to thrown into the water. Now, if you have traditional depression, you hit that water like a thud. It's almost like a rock. You sink. It is a fall. It is a just melt into the darkness. They stop wanting to do things. They become a shell of themselves. They're the people. In these seasons that I've experienced, you don't want to get out of the bed. You don't want to do the things that you enjoy doing. Your hope and your light for the future is going dim. It is just a descent into darkness, and that's a little bit more visible to see on the outside because this person doesn't want to leave the house or get out of bed or do what they normally like to do. But on the other hand, if you're a person that is more inclined to have high functioning depression, now this person, as they hit the water, they're immediately triggered to start moving faster. They start treading water and they turn into like a swan. Because if you've ever looked at a swan from the body up, you see them just easily gliding through and navigating the water, right? So high functioning depression person from the outside is going through this traumatic situation, but they may be doing it with grace or with poise or somehow succeeding through it. But underneath the water, their legs are moving violently, just killing it. They're in this turbulent water, and currents are strong, and so they're just getting exhausted and just having to move fervently through the water. And so their depression looks one way on the outside, but it feels and it manifests underneath a lot differently. Because this person with high functioning depression will burn themselves out and will work, achieve, and distract themselves with busyness and concern from what it looks like from the outside as a coping mechanism from the experience that they're going through. The coping mechanism for traditional is more of a flight or freeze response, and for someone with high functioning, it's more of a fight response. They're trying to push through, work through, and ultimately save face through the situation. Now, this is not someone who is superficially always worried about external appearance, but high functioning depression often hits people with many things in common. And so I'm going to pull my list back out and note those for you. So this is a newer concept for me too, and in learning over the last several years. And personally, the season that I experienced this the most is right after Zadie was born and Justin deployed, and then the pandemic hit and Zadie had to go into the hospital and I was by myself, and it was traumatic situation after traumatic situation, back to back to back. And so for me, high functioning depression was my body's natural response to making sure that I stayed alive, I did what I needed to do, and I sailed through that season of life, motherhood, and being amongst a worldwide traumatic situation. And before I go any further, I should probably define trauma for us in a more normalizing way, I guess, because for a long time I thought that trauma or a traumatic situation had to be something really tragic, like definitionally tragic. A terrible car accident, the loss of a loved one, abuse, something just horrific. But what I've learned is that trauma is really anything that happens to you that is a shock to your nervous system. So it is something that takes you from your normal life and immediately catapults you into a different existence, a different plane, a different reality. So obviously tragic situations like the loss of a loved one or a specific event can do that, but it can also be traumatic in positive ways, like having a child, a spouse deploying, but also winning Miss America or Miss Universe. It is a thing or an event that happens that, as I mentioned, catapults you into a different new normal. That is a traumatic experience. So it doesn't have to be, as I mentioned, something super horrific or definition based. It is something that is personalized to you. So if it is a shock to your nervous system and your adrenal system, then it is traumatic and your body is processing it as traumatic. So for me, one of the reasons that I've learned that I have a tendency for high functioning depression dates actually way back to when I was little. One of the things that they found in study is that there are some commonalities between people who have high functioning depression. And these are people that I've learned from my experience that as a young child even, were overachievers, were people that might even been labeled gifted, were the ones that were involved in a lot, people that didn't just live in one lane. So if you played sports and you danced and maybe did karate and piano, like you weren't living a very singularly linear life. Like your life was a little all over the place to start because you liked it that way. And when things are good and dandy and that is the normal, then and that's how you function well, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. People that have high functioning depression are often people that feel the need to jump from one accomplishment to the next. You don't celebrate your accomplishments well because it's more about the achievement itself than the label or the title. So maybe you hit a career goal and then before you've had time to even celebrate or acknowledgement, you've already worried about the next one and keep moving on. The tension with that comes with these traumatic situations happening that are good, that are monumentous, like for me becoming a mom, or maybe for Chesley was her becoming every title holder's dream of being Miss USA. But for so many people it's getting and receiving the accomplishments that you want and then kind of being like, okay, what's next, not knowing the answer to that questions. In my seasons of high functioning depression, that was a trigger for me to ask me what was next, or what are you doing, what are your next plans or your goals, especially like after I got married. It was really hard for me, but it is the contradiction of hitting that goal or finally living that dream while inside there's this aching and this emptiness internally, so you feel the need to fill that void with more accomplishment or more stuff or more things on your resume, but never getting the true happiness or serotonin, which is a real chemical imbalance that you need in order to be truly happy. And that's how people who have it all, celebrities that have money, have fame, have everything that the world says we want or need to be happy, can still be such in a dark place because nothing fills that void. And now, as a Christian person, I know that part of filling that void is working on my spiritual practice and my relationship with God. But as a Christian person, I also know that in my seasons of struggling with high functioning depression, it was shameful to me to feel like I was doing everything I could and in the best practice of my relationship with Christ in my life, but yet that too wasn't enough. And the church would just say, pray more, do this more. It's the whole premise behind why I started my ministry with Unapologetic, because it was just felt like the church just added another layer of shame. Or even family members can do that and make you feel like, well, you've got everything you want. Your community gaslights you and says, well, if those were my problems, I would be fine, because your problems don't look the same as theirs, and so they obviously look easier. So thinking about those things as friends and family members from the outside looking in, people struggling with high functioning depression in this way will busy themselves in search for that serotonin, but have fear and shame behind explaining to people that you love that it's still not enough, or that you are burning out and you don't want to do the things that you love anymore, and you're exhausted because you feel like a weight in this world that is not worth the energy. To be the point that you are contemplating taking your own life, which is not something I'm grateful that I can relate to, but you have got to be to such a point that your existence feels like a burden that you don't want to cast on somebody else. And so that's why I get so upset when I see those posts that it says check on your strong friends. Because as a strong friend, the times we are not the kind of people that are going to tell you any different when you check on us. We don't need you to check on us and say, hey girl, how are you doing? Because we're going to say fine. To me, that is the cliche platitude for mental health. That is, let me know if you're okay or what I can do when someone loses a loved one. Like, the nice gesture is there, but it lacks any substance of actual Christ-like empathy or behavior. And so if you really want to help someone that you think is having a hard time, or if you're wanting to figure out a way to help a friend that's going through a rough patch or a rough season in any way that you can sense, because as a friend, you will be able, if you're living life in close proximity to these people, you will know, because they are not taking care of themselves on the inside internally. You can tell that. One of my triggers is I get rage, I get angry. So when you get sad with traditional depression, it's more of like rage. I'm quicker to like get irritated. My ability to be touched out or overstimulated is too high because I have too much going on in my head. So if you're living in close proximity, as we should, to our close people, you'll notice. We don't need you to check on us. We need you to come to our house and notice that laundry hasn't been done in 2 weeks, and you can't even walk into the laundry room and we need help doing the laundry, to fold the laundry. Or that there's piled up clean clothes that you can barely walk into the bedroom and she can't get in the bed by herself, without having to move laundry over. But at the same time, her living space, on the first floor of her house where everybody walks in and she entertains people, is perfectly fine. Because it is a delicate balance of keeping up face, keeping up your brand, your persona, your expectations, because you don't want people to catch you. You're scared people don't catch you slipping. You're scared that people are going to think you're weak. You're scared people are going to think that you can't handle it. And you can often handle those big things, but it's the little things that you're struggling with. Taking care of the things people don't see behind closed doors. So the best checking in ministry that friends did for me when I was in that season was like my friend Cassie coming to my house and unloading the dishwasher for me. Or my friend Bridget calling me when she was at the grocery store and said, hey, what can I pick up for you? Taking something off of my overwhelming to-do list, because we bury ourselves in high functioning depression under task, under achievement, under things we need to do or that we think we need to do, in hopes that if we do these certain things, these large accomplishments from the work side, from the visual side, from the outside looking inside, then maybe we'll receive enough accolades or enough attention, whatever it is, by way of serotonin from that we'll finally get the energy, the happiness to handle the small things. So having someone to come do those, take that little bit of load off, because you feel guilt and you feel shame because you haven't done those things. You haven't unloaded the dishwasher, you haven't done the laundry, you haven't wiped off your counters, like whatever those things are, those little maintenance things. Then sit on my bed with me or fold towels with me and say, like, man, I noticed you had a lot of stuff going on lately, or I read that thing you've posted on Facebook. I felt that too, and relate to them and say, like, I get it. Or I know someone who's been there. If you're looking to see a therapist or you need help, I'm more than willing to, take the baby or cover for you with work, so you can take time to do that. We need someone else to actively go ahead and take it off our plate or offer to do that for us, because we're not going to ask. We're not going to burden someone else. And someone that chooses to take their own life, and I say this as someone who's lost 3 significant people in my life to it, their biggest concern is being a burden to someone else, and that they believe that by unaliving themselves, they take the burden away. That they are past the point of conceptualizing the grief that they will pass on, but they think that they are the problem because they feel the problem. Their whole existence internally is a problem, and so their fear is that problem that they manifest is being pushed outwards, and other people can feel that, and so they wouldn't dare dump it onto someone else by telling them their problems. High functioning people are people that are often taking casseroles to other people's house while they're struggling. Look, it's just how it works. And I'll take all of this that we talked about and layer on top of that the social pressures of being someone who lives in the spotlight, of being someone who receives thousands of hate comments a day. And this is where, like, I think it's probably stung me all week, because in this way I can relate to Chelsea, of like the stress and the pressure that feels, and how some days you can get hate messages or death threats or ugly racist comments, and you can just let it roll off your back with it. And there's some days where it is just the affirmation that you are not adding better to this world, but that you are truly the embodiment of all your worst nightmares, and that the world would be better off without you, because that's what these negative things people are commenting are saying. Instead of checking in on your friends and saying, like, let me know what I can do, or how are you feeling, and like these empty platitudes, every day for our closest people we should be their biggest cheerleaders. Man, I see all that you're doing. You are killing it. I don't see how you're doing it all, and I'm sure it's hard. Let me get your dinner tonight. I'm gonna have it DoorDash to your house, because I know it's a lot. And acknowledge what's going on. Affirm that they are doing a great job, and then go to their house and see how they're really doing, because I promise you it is not something that a check-in text is going to help. That often is just like the statement of, let me know what I can do, does more to make you feel better than it does the person receiving it, because they are worried about being a burden on someone else. So I feel like that was kind of all over the place. If you have questions about my personal experience with it and what it has looked like for me, I can talk about it more, but I just want to open and start the conversation that it is so different. I told Justin in the past that people think of depression as like being like Eeyore, just have no hope in thinking and saying things, well, everything bad always happens to me, or it's not going to get better, or it's always my fault, or things are always bad, and they're just always down and out and negative. High functioning depressed people are people trying to power through it, people that are often saying the right things, trying to affirm to themselves, or they're saying it to other people because they need to hear it back. And so it just looks so different. We've got to have deeper, meaningful relationships in our lives. They can't be surface level and just check-ins. That's not going to go anywhere. If anything, it reminds us how many more people we're burdening when they check in and it doesn't go anywhere. I hope this was helpful. If it was, share it with a friend. Don't forget to subscribe. I forget all the things I'm supposed to say on YouTube, but I hope that at least gives some insight in how depression can manifest so differently for different people. But if this is something you're struggling with, then I encourage you to not only seek help in a clinical way, but to also let your friends and family know that, hey, I think I struggle with this, like, and let them know, like, not in like a scary way, but I can see how this affects me. And it just opens the conversation, because there's words that I have, a phrase that I always say is, I'm having a hard time, that lets my loved ones know that, like, hey, Kendall's in a dark spot, and they kind of go into how to help me zone. And it just helps, you know. So we have to be informed for ourselves, but we have to inform those we love. See you soon. Bye, friends.